So how you doing, David?
Good, thanks. Not bad. How are you?
Not bad. Pretty good. So funny enough, this week this is my second recording this week of cyberoinks, and the last guy I did it with, his background was he was also a um, um, an IT communication specialist at a submarine.
No.
What are the chances?
Really? UK
Yeah.
or US or where?
No, he's US based. He was in the Navy.
Wow. Should do as an intro.
Crazy though.
That's mental.
I'm not kidding. I was just like, because I told you about the intro thing, and I was reading it this morning. I'm like, are you kidding me? Is this real? Am I looking at the wrong person today?
Well, so he works in cyber as well, and he was on this podcast.
He does, yeah.
No.
It's gonna come up in a few
Well,
weeks.
you need to tell me who he is. I'll message him on LinkedIn.
I think I gotta connect you guys.
Yeah, you should do. Definitely.
So as an intro, could you just briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm David Taylor. I'm the founder and managing director of Aruga Cyber. Aruga Cyber are a managed service provider, and we provide managed security operations, so defensive security operations, managed SOC, threat exposure management, incident response, all of that kind of stuff to businesses in the UK.
Cool. So I just saw a video on LinkedIn. We talked about SOC.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me in like one sentence what makes a good SOC?
A good SOC has good coverage. It had good processes, and it has good. It's using the tech to a best serviceability. So there's no point in just being able to detect stuff. What are you going to do when you've detected stuff? Every detection needs to have an outcome, whether that's alerting somebody, whether it's containing something. So the whole thing needs to have a lot of good process, technology tuned to where it needs to be. But you also need to understand the risk appetite of the company that you're working for. So every company is completely different, depending on industry, depending on what data they've got. So you really need to understand the environment where you're working.
Okay.
In more than one sentence, but
it was a very long sentence.
you can edit it.
But you made it work. All right. Well, anyway, so what we're doing today, 12 questions for cyber experts.
Mm-hmm.
With your background, you obviously are an expert. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about some of these questions that we put together. The way the questions are framed is it's always sort of like a yes or no or ABC type of question, and you got to pick one, right? Okay. The idea behind that is, cyber is a lot about priorities. There's always budget constraints. There's always, compromise that needs to be made. And so that's why it's done this way, right? Like it's kind of like, okay, so if you actually had to choose, what's sort of the way what are your thoughts about this? So what I would like to ask you is to really do choose like which of those two options is, even though, it might be like 49-51 or something like that, but still there is still some sort of lean. So basically always answer what's the answer, and then be like, explain briefly what's your reasoning behind it.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, let's go.
Can we do a bit of I always do a dry run type of a thing. It's just a funny little question.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had to choose between watching a UFC fight or a full game of lacrosse, which one would you go for?
So UFC or what?
Or a full game of lacrosse?
Probably lacrosse.
Sorry, I screwed up. It's not about lacrosse. I don't know why I got that mixed up. It's not lacrosse. Sorry, I gotta scratch that. It's not baseball. What's the game that's kind of like baseball?
Rounders?
No. Oh, whatever. I screwed it up. Cricket, that's what I meant. Yeah. So UFC fight versus cricket. Which one did you choose?
Probably cricket.
Okay.
And that's a weird answer because I'm into contact sports, so I'm a massive rugby fan. So in the UK, rugby league, a bit like American football, but some would argue tougher. But the reason why I say cricket is because I think it's just more of a fun sport to watch. So if you actually go to the cricket, it's normally a load of mates sat in the sun all day, having fun. So yeah, probably go for that.
Nice. Cool. Perfect. So you obviously got the concept. All right, so let's go. So first question. There's a lot of talk still about BYOD. On the other hand, when you talk to a lot of cyber professionals, managed devices is a big topic as well. So if you were to sort of give a general advice, and by the way, think about this from a perspective of a mid-sized company, right? Because that's going to zoom in on what we're talking about here a bit. If you had to choose between having a fully only managed device strategy, cybersecurity strategy, or a strategy that has a good BYOD policy, which one was your vote?
BYOD. The reason for that is everybody wants access to information and to be able to do things at all times now. So to have managed devices, you need to have like managed laptops for the staff, which is cool. But then managed phones, things like that. If people want emails on the phones, are you going to pay for them to have a work phone? They're going to carry two phones around. And I think it's probably never been easier than ever, although it's still not 100% easy, but to give people access to stuff like that. So even like where we are, we've got work laptops where people work on them, they're locked down. But if people want to put the work email on the personal phone, that's absolutely fine. We can lock it down. We can sandbox those apps on the phone. We can remote wipe it if we want. We can monitor them. So I think BYOD, and the harder you make it for somebody, the more rules you have in place. And if you're just stopping them from doing the job, they're just going to find ways around it anyway. So yeah, BYOD wins my vote every time.
Totally. Perfect. Nice. It's going well. All right. Another thing that's sort of a, especially in the mid-sized sector, there's a lot of the times, cybersecurity professionals and MSSPs sort of have to come into an organization and explain the basics, right? One of those things is cybersecurity is not a tech thing, not only a tech thing. It's about people, process, technology. Now, if we're thinking about those organizations that are not really there yet, don't really have good cybersecurity hygiene and policy, out of those three, which one would you say is the most important for them to focus on?
Difficult question, because it really depends on how you're going to look at it. But I'd probably say if I had to pick one, it would be people. Because if you don't have the people on board, or you don't have the right people in place, none of the other stuff is going to work. The people aren't going to follow the process. The people aren't going to configure the technology. You won't have the right people in place to tell you what technology you need to do the job. So I think starting with people, have a good culture, have the right people in the right places, and then everything else should fall into place.
Okay, cool. So when we then go into what it is that you actually do, again, one of those big things is prevention response. What do you think needs to be done first?
I would say prevention. Prevention's always better than cure. Yeah, definitely prevention, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, organizations are getting probed all the time. They're getting attacked all the time. We see it in our secure operations center. Anything that's exposed to the internet is going to be getting scanned. It's going to be getting probed. So having the technology to see that and just to stop the absolute basics is better than responding to everything. So with the right configurations, the right tools in place, you can get rid of probably 80% of the most common attack vectors. And then you don't have to go into a response mode. So I think definitely prevention is better than cure.
So what's a better way to, prevent things from happening? Would you say it's more about educating people in the organization, educating the users, or is it more about tech?
Difficult question. I would probably say can't do a 50-50 on this one. I suppose if you took it right down to the absolute basics and you had to pick one, then obviously education and people is the most important, because without the people, again, you're not going to have the right tech in place. They're not going to configure the tech to where it needs to be. The people need to understand what the priorities of the business are, what the risk appetite of the business is. And then once you've got all of that, then you configure the tech to back all of that up.
Okay, cool. So let's look at something else for a bit. Thinking about some of the common threats. Obviously, ransomware is high up there.
Yeah.
Now, if we switch sort of to the tech side of things, do you think when it comes to things like ransomware, or maybe not things like ransomware, but ransomware specifically, threats specifically, is it a better strategy or do we need to innovate, sort of, generally speaking? Is there lack of good enough technology to make the defenses of an organization against things like ransomware good enough? Or do you think it's more about using legacy tech the right way?
If you think about how a ransomware works, right? So a ransomware attack isn't somebody just appears out of nowhere. They're all of a sudden in your organization and they start encrypting a load of files. There's a lot of stuff that happens before that. So someone's, first of all, they've got to get in. Then they've got to understand what your network looks like, where your data is, what accounts you've got. They've got to move laterally. They've got to elevate privileges. They've got to get admin accounts. They've got to destroy your backups. They've got to get that data out of the organization before they encrypt it. So I think it depends what you mean by legacy tech, but if you mean by legacy tech doing the basics right, then obviously that wins hands down first. A lot of that stuff on the perimeter of you could get rid of 80% of the attack vectors of people getting in by doing the basics right. Technology has advanced loads, AI, stuff like that, using things like machine learning, part of AI, to analyze user behavior. That's more advanced tech now that people are using. We use it a lot in our SOC. That's great. It sets a baseline of user behavior. It allows you to spot anomalies easier. And attackers are using that kind of stuff anyway. So think about how an attacker is using AI to breach an organization now. Even like the first part of the kill chain, so reconnaissance, they'll be using AI tools, they'll be using bots to scan social media sites, looking on LinkedIn, finding out who works at the company, watching what they're posting, seeing if someone's going on holiday, if they post it on social media, they know it's the best time to attack them, that kind of stuff. Using those, we need to use those tools from a defensive point of view as well to combat how the attacker is using them to breach. But going back right to the start, definitely doing the basics right. If that's what you mean by legacy tech, then yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, sorry, maybe legacy isn't the right word, but it's more about using what's been at hand. Let's say for the last, or what's been available for the last 5 years, let's say, or is there really some sort of
multi-factor authentication, phishing protection, all those basic conditional access in 365, all of that stuff is dead easy to do. Every organization should have that in place. They're the absolute bare minimum basics that you should be doing.
So the next question, thinking about sort of ransomware from the other side of things, in case there is a ransomware event, should or should not the organization that's been hit pay?
Should not. The reason for that is, again, it completely depends, but if for the purposes of this question, I'm going to say should not. And the reason why that is, there's absolutely no guarantee that paying that money is going to get you the outcome that you want. Your data's been stolen. It's already been encrypted. So it's been encrypted. It's already been stolen. I mean, ransomware now has gone to double, triple extortion. So they'll ransomware your environment. They'll charge you money. You'll pay it. Then they'll say, oh, by the way, we've still got this data. Pay us more. You pay it. They give you the data back. And then they'll say, pay us more or we're going to come back again. So when does it end? So the way I always look at it is, pay the ransom, you're going to end up on some kind of sucker list somewhere, and people are just going to keep coming back for more. So definitely don't pay, which is bad because a lot of businesses, and like the small, mid-sized businesses we're focusing on now, that could ruin them. That could ruin the business overnight.
Yeah.
But don't negotiate with terrorists, as they say in America.
All right, this next one, I don't think that one applies to you. So let's skip over that one. Password policies. So there's different, I don't want to say opinion, there's different standards on this actually when it comes to password policies, and especially in sort of the idea of how often you should rotate passwords or whether you should rotate passwords. What are your thoughts on this? What's a good way? How frequently should passwords be changed to make, what's the best approach from your perspective?
So I think the best approach for this, and what I would advise, is to follow the guidance that we kind of have here in the UK, so with NCSC. So it used to be change your passwords every 90 days, whatever. But what's the point in that? People are just going to add another digit to the end of the password. People have then got to keep remembering different passwords. They're going to write them down. It's pretty pointless. So I would say have a strong password, use it until you think it's been breached. Report it if you think it's been breached, but then also use the tools like password managers. They're brilliant. Everybody should be using that now. You can have really complex passwords. You don't really have to remember them. It auto-fills when you go onto websites. Don't be saving your passwords in the browser. That's like one of the worst things you could do. But yeah, I think follow the guidance that we have here in the UK at the moment and have a strong password, 3 random words, whatever you want it to be, but only change it when you think it needs to be changed.
All right. So thinking about password, one sort of common problem with passwords is, password reuse on other websites. I guess you kind of touched upon on the password vaults and password managers. But that aside, let's say that's not a policy that a company adopts. And then what sometimes happens is, or what a lot of times happens is, people know they're not supposed to do something, but they do it anyway.
Absolutely.
So that common thing is, I know I was given a password, or I know I was supposed to create a password that was 80 long and whatever.
Yeah.
And I wasn't supposed to use it elsewhere, but I did. Now, in that situation, from your perspective, sort of legal stuff aside, but who's at fault in the situation when this happens?
The user, I would say. You've given them the education. You've already said there, the user has said, I knew I shouldn't be doing it, so why are you doing it? I mean, you understand why people do it, because humans are lazy, aren't they? People want convenience, they want speed. That's why they do it. But if it comes down to it, it's definitely the user's fault. And we see this all the time in our SOC. So we do a thing, threat exposure management, where we can like monitor the dark web, look for credentials that have been leaked and stuff. If we do that on organizations, the stuff we find is phenomenal. I've done it for places where I've worked previously, just to check that the tool's working, and the stuff it finds is mad. Like admin accounts with the password I know is right because it was the admin account when I worked there. But the reason why that happens is not necessarily because the organisation where the person works has been breached. They've just used their work email address and password to sign into a third-party app that has then been breached. That's been sold. Someone will then try the domain of the work that the email belongs to with the same password, and chances are they might get in. So definitely the user. Everybody knows. You don't even need education in the workplace to know that you shouldn't be using the same password everywhere. I would say that's pretty much it.
At this point, it is, yeah. So let's switch up to sort of trends and hypes and that sort of area. There's two things I want to talk about. The first one is zero trust architecture.
Sorry?
What is zero trust architecture? What is zero trust architecture? Is it sort of, do you see it more as a buzzword, or is it something that's of course it's a real concept, but is it a meaningful, impactful concept? Which side do you lean on?
I think, again, both. It's a meaningful concept and it can definitely work, but people just throw that around as a buzzword, like, hey, zero trust architecture, you should be doing this, buy this from us, it will make it zero trust. It doesn't work like that. That is a whole massive project for someone to do. Like, the work involved in doing true zero trust architecture is phenomenal. It is a concept, but for the purposes of this question, I'm going to say a lot of people use it as a buzzword and probably don't really understand what it means.
Cool. Same question for AI.
So AI is yes, it is a buzzword. I mean, even I'm sick of saying it. And so we've built AI into our services, and like I have to talk about all the time. And it's said that much now. When I'm speaking to clients, I often have in the back of my mind that they're thinking, oh, here we go, another one. So I have to actually demo how we're using it to show them that we are actually using it. But AI is a broad concept. There's so many different areas of it, like Gen AI, machine learning, which I touched on before. That is part of AI. That's not a buzzword because that's being used everywhere at the moment, isn't it?
So you know what I'm really curious about? How do you, because you said it, you said this is something that's, like you got to think about how do you explain so that it's not like, oh, another one. Like I've heard this a million times already.
Yeah.
What is it like if you could give advice to anyone else sort of who's dealing with the situation? What is it that you did that works well to kind of step away from this label and just using a buzzword that doesn't really mean anything, to having meaningful conversations, but that do entail the idea that there is some machine learning part of your product that is meaningful and has value to the whole thing that you're doing?
Yeah. So the way I've done that is, I mean, you can have it on your marketing materials and say AI this, AI that. Yeah, great. You've got to do that. But when it comes to having actual discussions with clients or potential clients or anybody that I'm speaking to, is I walk them through exactly how it's being used. What part of AI are we using? If we're using Gen AI, what model are we using? Where is the data stored? How is it being used, and how will it benefit the customer? Same with machine learning. Like, some people don't really understand what that is, where it is. We're using it every day. So I explain to the customer how it works, what it does, and then I show them in real time as well. So if I'm on a call with a prospect, I'll actually give a live demo where I'll show it in action so they can actually see it and understand it. And that gets real feedback. A lot of cybersecurity is like, it's just like an ocean of noise. It's like everybody's saying the same thing. Some people are really good at what they're doing and they've got real credibility, but then it's very easy in cybersecurity for a lot of people to jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, I'm doing cyber as well. And it's really hard to get your voice heard, especially when you're doing things right. So I think if you are doing it right and you want to show credibility, you need to actually walk the customers or whoever you're talking to through what you're doing and show it to them in action. If you are doing it properly, then why wouldn't you want to show that? So that would be my advice.
Cool. All right. If you were to give, one piece of general advice to mid-sized businesses about how they should think about cybersecurity, or if there's one thing that they could change, what would that be from your point of view?
One thing they should change themselves about cybersecurity.
Yeah. What's like a common thing that you see that businesses should change about the way they think about cybersecurity?
I would say that businesses need to understand that cybersecurity isn't just one thing. It's I say this all the time. It's the profession of professions. Cybersecurity is just the umbrella term. There's like 100 different jobs that fall under that you can do. So if a provider's coming to you and saying, "Yeah, we will manage all of your cybersecurity," like I'd be asking serious questions like, "What does that mean? Like, are you doing defensive stuff? Are you doing pen testing? Like, what are you configuring things for me? Like, what are you actually doing?"
Mm-hmm.
One thing that really, really bugs me, and I found this a lot since founding Aruga and like going to speak to customers and things like that, is mid-sized customers, let's say like a law firm, for example, right? They've got 200 staff. They've got very sensitive data that they need to protect. They don't really understand where it is or what they need to do with it. They don't understand what the regulatory impacts of that data going missing is from regulators, but also from customers trying to sue them if that personal data goes missing because it's very sensitive. But they'll say, because they're a small, mid-sized business, they outsource their IT support, and they'll say, "Oh, don't need to worry about that. My MSP's handling it." I'm like, "Oh, right, are they?" And then really what the MSP is doing is saying they do cybersecurity, but all they're doing is maybe putting updates on the on the laptops. That's about it. So they really need to understand what cybersecurity is, and that it's not just one thing. It's a whole process. It's an ecosystem. There's hundreds of different avenues that you can go down and different things that can make that up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks so much for the conversation, Dave.
Yeah.
It's been great. It's been great having you. You had some really insightful things to say. You know, if what we're going to be doing down the road is other concepts.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to having you here on Oinks again.
Thank you very much.
You have a lovely day, man.
So, you too. Thank you.